Hello, and welcome to Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg. We're here to explore the imposter syndrome that haunts creatives, delving into how it affects their lives and work. Join us as we chat with authors and artists about creativity, self-doubt, featuring imposter characters in their stories, and the occasional imposter who pops up in their day-to-day lives.
And today we have the great pleasure of welcoming Christina Baker Kline and Burt to the show. Christina Baker Kline, whose 8 novels include the New York Times bestsellers Orphan Train, The Exiles, and A Piece of the World, is renowned for crafting unforgettable characters and richly textured narratives. Burt has earned wide acclaim for the psychological depth and haunting atmosphere of her literary suspense novel, The Dig. Together, the two authors blended their complementary strengths and talents for their new thriller, Please Don't Lie, out now. Christina, Anne, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome. Well, this is such a treat for us, Anne and Christina. I believe you know this, but obviously Greg and I are writing partners and have co-authored 4 novels ourselves, but we're also longtime friends like you guys. I think we have you beat by a couple of years. I think we're going on like 27 or 28 years of friendship now, but
Nice.
We're in that same realm. And it's just always such an amazing experience for us to connect, to kind of double date with other author partnerships. So I would love to know, I want to know everything, but I would love to know how you met and how this amazing partnership came to be.
Great. All right. Well, I'll start. Thank you so much. It's so much fun to be here. And yeah, it's really fun to talk to another couple. So Christina and I are now at 26 years, so we're gaining on you, but we're, right there. And we met in Montclair, New Jersey, where Christina had been living when we first met for a couple of years, having relocated there from the Upper West Side of New York. And I had just relocated from Brooklyn. And my side of this story is how instrumental Christina was in my transition from New York to the suburbs of New York. So for anybody who doesn't know, because Montclair is specific, it had a reputation of being a place where there were a lot of writers and artists and creatives. And that was important to me. And when I moved there, but I got there and I went from an apartment to a house, and I looked around my house, and the writers weren't in my house. They weren't in my backyard. I was like, where do I find these writers who will make me feel like part of something? So the local paper arrived, and I saw a beautiful article about Christina appearing at the local bookseller, Watchung Books, which is still there and a huge part of both of our careers, promoting the paperback of her second novel and giving a reading there. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to go. And I'm not only just going to go, but I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to introduce myself and ask her if she's willing to have coffee with me, which is not like me, but there was something compelling. Like I don't know, Christina, maybe I just liked your picture. But I did
and
it.
Be honest, I think you were like, I have to get out of my house.
I was desperate. But I was really desperate for the right people, let's be real.
Yes.
So I came to Christina's reading, and she was so generous and so kind. And then not only did she say yes to coffee, but the next day she called me up and said, hey, you wouldn't want to skip coffee and instead play hooky and go to the movies with me at a matinee, would you? And that's how it started.
Oh, as many great relationships do.
All right. There was something, you know how, well, you both know this all too well, I'm sure. Sometimes you just have pheromones with someone. You have a connection. You have, on some deep level, your brains seem to mesh. And Anne and I have always had that one way or another. This is our first novel that we've written together, but we've collaborated in many, many ways over the more than 2 decades we've been friends. And I do want to tell you about that one, that movie. My husband has heard us tell this story a number of times when we were on tour telling it live. And finally he was like, this story does not we have to find out what the movie is. So he did a deep dive. He actually found what movies came out that month, what movies were playing at our local art theater that we went to that day, what movies were matinees, and he narrowed it down, and we discovered that it was Run, Lola, Run. Do you remember that movie?
I love that movie.
Love that movie, and kind of the perfect movie for us because it's about a female protagonist It's a thriller. There's this propulsive movement forward. We started talking about that movie, and we sort of never stopped talking about books and movies. That was books, movies, television, all manner of media, newspaper articles, the New Yorker, New York Magazine. We were just reading, experiencing culture, going to plays together, all of it for the past 25 years. And so I think over the years, through various ways, we edited a book together, which taught us a lot about how to collaborate in that way as editors.
And how each of us thinks. Like that really solidified.
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah. I was asked to start an imprint for a small publishing company, and I brought Anne in. We actually worked on it together for a year. In the end, it was too consuming, and it became obvious that we wouldn't be able to do our creative work too. So we put that aside. We worked in a Hollywood writer's room for 3 months together. We worked on a podcast. There were many different iterations before we decided to write a thriller together. So we kind of have developed a supple way of working together where it's sort of like handing off a baton and also sometimes just literally sitting across the desk from each other.
I think one more thing. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't add the other thing that just sort of bonded us for life when we first met, which was not only did we find this intellectual compatibility and the storytelling compatibility, we also quickly learned we were both at the time the same amount pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a big bonding.
We had children 3 months apart who are now
3 weeks apart. 3 weeks apart.
I'm sorry, 3 weeks apart. So so that was crazy. And so and we lived about a 4-minute walk apart. Right now we live 6 blocks apart in New York. So so all of that has made it really nice for us to maintain a friendship and a collaborative sort of aura.
Nice. Well, 2 questions. The first is very quick. Christina, is your husband available as a research assistant?
Okay. I
That
know.
level of dedication is rare.
He's unbelievable. He's also very fast. Like he got all that very quickly.
Yeah.
I think I need to retain his services.
Yes.
But more to your friendship, you mentioned kind of almost this pheromonal level of connection early on and this very fast friendship. Did you have an inkling right off the bat that you might have this kind of creative synergy and spark? Did that occur to you, early on?
Yeah. I mean, the first collaboration that we did together that was formal was a collection of essays back in 2008. Okay. So that was pretty soon. That was a few years into our friendship. So not long thereafter. And it was really because we had been amassing these conversations that just, we kept pushing each other on these issues. So this was called About Face. Women look in the mirror and talk about what they see.
Yes.
And it stemmed from the same set of obsessions that we found out we shared that we are carrying forward into psychological thrillers today. And I think part of why I would answer that as a yes, that we knew very, very quickly, is because among our peers, each of us had lots of intellectual sparks with other people, but Christina and I share a combination of things that spark us that's rare. Like it's like almost like a high-low kind of thing. We are equally obsessed with parsing, Proust and, The Hunting Wives. So we can talk as long about either one of those. And that's what's rare for me in the friendship, to find them both in one person.
The Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders documentary is very important to me. This is totally true. And then the other funny thing I was just going to mention that we discovered soon after meeting is that we actually went to the same college. We both went to Yale. We were 3 years apart. We didn't know it, but we took the same English classes. Yeah. And so we actually had a base of knowledge of certain books that we had both read, Chaucer and Milton and things like that were informed our intellectual friendship too. And then another thing that has happened is that we, from the very beginning, I moved to Montclair because my college roommate had moved there, and she started a book club with another woman. I was the third person to come along. Anne might have been the fourth. We're still together as a book club, and we've read hundreds of books together as a group. So that's another funny base that we share, which is that we have this contemporary reading base as well as a kind of classical reading base, and we're part of a writers' reading group where we do read Proust and Tolstoy and all that. Is that what you were going to say? Sorry, yeah.
No, I was actually going to point out that there was a path that diverged for us, though, along the way that made me not sure that we would be able to continue. And that was just our career paths really went in our kind of prime time of life, raising families and having careers at the same time. We diverged, very significantly. I would say, Christina, once you published Orphan Train, your writing career took on a heft and a time commitment that was really, really powerful, while at the same time, my life circumstances made it such, going through, things like divorce, that I had to turn and pivot away from pushing forward in my creative writing to writing full-time and being the sole breadwinner for my family in a very different capacity. There were times along the way when I have to say, like, Christina almost single-handedly kept me reassured that I would come back around to the literary career I wanted. She was that kind of friend to me, and I ultimately did, but it wasn't until later.
Well, I love what you say about that time in your life. I mean, Anne, shot to the top of her field in communication strategy. Am I saying it right? In nonprofit communications and running these huge departments at Columbia University and at nonprofits. She was commuting to Boston for a big organization. And for many people, it would have been the dream job. I mean, you really were like a jet setter in that world. And Anne was like, I know this is somebody's dream job, but it's not my dream job. You were always very clear about that.
Wow.
So I knew that you always wanted to continue working, and I wanted you to too. But I mean, life is life, and we have to do, we have to feed our families. Yeah.
Well, there's so many threads that you both just talked about that, I really relate to. I know Greg does, because there's a lot of just, commonality in the stories. But the thing that is really striking me is this idea of, kind of friendship first and sharing these big life events. I mean, just the fact that you were both pregnant when you met and living in, and you were living in a new place, and that kind of culture shock from going from New York City to a suburb is a life event for sure, especially for creatives. You mentioned the end of a marriage and career stuff. So I wonder how, knowing so much about each other and being through these like various phases of your life, how that has informed your communication, your shorthand when you're actually collaborating. Do you find yourself like referring like, well, that reminds me of when you were going through that thing, or that character is like that boss? Do you find that the kind of knowledge you have of each other's lives through your friendship goes into your writing collaboration?
I'll just start. I think that seeing each other through a lot of difficult life moments, I actually had a terrible year of, I had a really virulent form of cancer. I was in treatment at Sloan for a year, and my mother died in the middle of all of it at a young age. And there were other bad things that year. And it was just like that, that was a life moment where Anne was very present for me. I think what we have learned by being lifelong friends, in addition to collaborators, is that we give each other a lot of space. In other words, I think our trust and respect of each other for each other is very high. And if I don't get something to her within a week or a few days, she knows that I will do it. And if she doesn't, I know that she will. We don't freak out on each other, because I think there's a bedrock of understanding that we're both in this together and equally want the product to be a book. I think you have to have that as collaborators. We've met a lot of collaborators, and some of the relationships fall apart when one person is more invested than the other, or they have totally different styles. When one person works super quickly but messily, and the other person is very slow and meticulous, or whatever. I think Anne and I have just learned through our life experience, to give each other a lot of leeway. I would say. I don't know.
I agree with you on that. I also think we have some perspective. I mean, I'm interested, Liz, in that question of like what from our lives that we know relates to the characters once they're on the page. Because as both of you know, as creative writers, like you don't always know when you're writing the characters where that inspo comes from. It's just like it's all kind of mushed in there, and you just feel it. And then it's not until you get either to the editing stage or some other later place that you go, oh, yeah, right. I do recognize the origin of that. Having Christina in it together with me, as opposed to just me in it, means sort of it's double the opportunities to find those moments of recognition. And that feels really generative. It feels exciting to be known and seen by your collaborator in that way, and to know and see your collaborator. One of the things that Christina just alluded to that I could not agree with more is that issue too of just respect and trust. Yeah. And that absolutely comes on the back of having had so many different complex experiences. Like, as I'm sure you both know, as writing partners, we've seen other teams come and go, sometimes, with acrimony. I think one of the things that we really understand is that an argument on the page that we're having between us is nothing compared to like the vicissitudes of real life. So they become productive conversations, not fissures. I've really found that consistently with Christina. We always push through anything that where one of us is like, I don't see what you're doing. It always becomes a bigger opportunity for creative thought and fodder.
I mean, and I think speaking for myself, I trust Anne so much that like I'm always trying to impress her. So like I just sent her a paragraph where I was like, I thought this would make you laugh. So, for that I'm working on. But I'm always trying to impress her. And also when we do disagree, I'm not always fighting for my point of view, because I'm also like, maybe she's right. I mean, she probably is. I think that's a very high level of trust that I have in her.
Yeah. Goes back both ways.
Yeah. Well, we just sort of touched on this a little bit in terms of, real kind of life experiences that each of you had somewhat traumatic, a bit of loss. And it occurs to me with the book, Please Don't Lie. One of the themes that really runs through the whole book is, grief, loss, and trauma, and how people either do or do not process that in successful and healthy ways. Did you kind of know that you were going in wanting to explore that topic on the front end of the book, or was that something, as you sort of alluded to, Anne, where it's like it was sort of in there and it came out as you wrote into it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. We knew from the get-go that we wanted to have our 4 main characters in a situation where nobody would be quite sure who was fully lying to whom, who was really who they said they were. Like that from the beginning was our kind of messy, fun impetus for this psychological thriller. And from there, it just started to make sense that our main character, Haley, would have some backstory where she had a lot of trauma beforehand that made it maybe a little bit unreliable in her own experience, whether she was being played or she was seeing things that were making her think she was being played. And we wanted to make sure that kind of dynamic and mystery and those twists were available to us. So it grounded itself in a way, I think, in her past.
And, we were, what we're discovering about ourselves in this genre is we're able to kind of explore these fascinating bits of popular culture. So we were really interested in self-help books and how people rely on them, why they rely on them, what they say, and how they can be used for good and for ill. And so we made up all these self-help books and all these slogans that we used in the book. But they're very closely based on real books and real advice. And we really loved the interplay of how you trust yourself or don't, and when you rely on advice of all kinds that comes from yourself, from books, from other people, and what it means to do that. So we loved that aspect of the story. And the one that we're working on now is takes on the trad wife influencer culture, which is another whole aspect of the female experience online that is fascinating to explore. So we just had a blast with the influencer stuff, and the idea also that some aspect of that culture of self-help preys on people who have been traumatized, and that is a real thing. And we wanted to look at that too.
Right. And you do it really, it's very smart. I feel like you're threading a needle of commentary and certainly some criticism, but not, heavy-handed by any stretch. And then it's humorous. I loved how you kind of wove in the self-help titles throughout the book for two of the characters. I don't want to give too much away.
Right.
And then along those lines, I think you also did the same thing with true crime podcasts.
Yes.
And, this is, I think, a theme or a trope that is coming out more and more in this genre. And I love books that center around or have commentary about true crime podcasts. And yet I felt like your guys' take on it and portrayal was really unique. And I'm wondering how much, true crime podcasts did you consume? How many other books that talk about this topic did you read? Talk a little bit about, because I think you have some really good commentary about the effect of the family members of victims who are featured in podcasts.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, that was a huge part of what we were doing. So at all times, part of Christina's and my collaboration has always been, even before we started writing this book, this constant text thread that sometimes is explosive, because like if one of us has insomnia, the other one wakes up to like 17 messages, all about popular culture, like true crime podcasts, and now like television series, these sort of limited series articles. We analyze them up, down, and sideways. We send and we analyze the commentary. That's, I think, the other thing that we love to do as much as analyzing the things themselves.
Yes.
We go meta on the meta, and I think that's where we come to kind of our shared insights that might, well, I hope, and I appreciate that you said that, Liz, are our own and aren't just a regurgitation. We really do think ultimately as far as we possibly can down the line of what the meaning is that we're finding that's unique to us. And it's through those text threads that we then turned into a form of research for ourselves, that we've mined a lot of the pieces that you're talking about for Please Don't Lie.
Yeah. So like some of those, for example, are Sarah Peterson's Substack, Jessica DeFino, Deborah Kopakin, feminist scholars and who are really taking a hard look at how women are portrayed in media. And that is really fun for us. That is our sweet spot. We love all that. And it's not even, it probably doesn't even come through in the book exactly. It's really just that it's an underpinning for us of the way we approach it. And Liz, I'm glad to hear you use the word humorous, because we had so much fun doing the thriller. I don't know if you guys laugh when you're working on your thriller.
Yeah.
I would guess you do. But we are just delight ourselves all the time. Like when we make a connection or find some extra twist, or even just some subtle thing in writing about, there's a sort of, the voice of that we've got at the moment, at least with these two books, is it's a third person, there's a little distance between the character and the reader. And so there's a bit of a space for commentary in there.
Yes.
Well, I'm curious about something that I think this leads nicely into something that you touched on earlier in the conversation about that sort of high-low, tension, if you want to call it a tension. But I say that only to say that I think that sometimes you get this idea in publishing where there's genre and then there's literary, right? And there's this sort of expectation, or there's this sort of I don't know, people come in with certain ideas, and obviously you were, studying classics at Yale and reading Chaucer, but you also are obviously, devotees of this genre in this form. Do you ever feel? Do you take a sort of a holistic approach to it as writers? Do you ever feel like there's sort of a tension or certain things that you have to, hit in terms of beats and form and stuff, or is it just more? Do you kind of just lead from your full well of experience?
We both worked very differently on this book than either one of us has in either of our more literary output.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we drew on that. These are character-driven novels, without a doubt. That's where we're coming from. But we also really took the opportunity, since this was our first thriller, to absorb and learn the form, because we have respect for this genre and know we are newbies to the genre and we love it. So with the first one, we didn't want to subvert it. We weren't going, and we weren't going in there with this arrogance of like, we're here, everybody, yay. We were like the ones we love and revere. We looked at Megan Abbott extensively. We looked at Tana French extensively. We looked at Gillian Flynn extensively, Ruth Ware. These were examples, and we did learn structurally how we wanted to approach from this deep dive of reading. So, for example, neither one of us is an outliner in our other work. We outlined very specifically, even like to the level of a screenplay outline on this one, especially because we were collaborating. I don't know if the two of you do this, but in order to build the world together, we wanted to both build the world together. And then we took off from there, and we could both trust that when whoever of us was working on the time at the material, that we had this shared understanding of what it was like. So that was not the same as in our other work.
And also it's very different. It's like, I mean, I want another podcast where we get to interview you, but because I want to hear what you have to say about this. But to us, it's like a puzzle or Sudoku or Wordle, or it's a brain teaser to figure out how to make it all work. And there are times when, at least when I'm working on a thriller, where I'm like, I don't know if I can pull this off. It's such a hard, you have to nail the landing. Yeah. And the other thing is thriller readers, oh my gosh, I have never had like readers. It's so intense. They read you in part to best you. I mean, they're wanting to see if you can pull it off and if they can figure out what's going on before the end of the book. And so when we read, I try not to read too much of the response, but there's a lot of it. And part of the whole game is about whether we've pulled off actually telling the story and surprising the readers. And the hard thing is, it's easy to surprise someone, but it's hard to make it feel inevitable at the same time. So as you guys know, the pacing and the red herrings and the diversion, all of that is so critically important in a thriller. And so we really bow to the masters and we feel like we've learned, from you guys and from people who have been doing this for a long time and who really understand the form. It's not easy. It's really hard. And it is a serious intellectual undertaking to pull it off.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, if you don't mind, Liz, I just want to, something just occurred to me. I was wondering quickly as you were kind of wrapping up that answer on that. Are there elements now that you have been sort of students of this genre that you might take back to something that would be deemed maybe more literary?
Yeah, 100%. It's been so rich in terms of the back and forth. I think each one feeds the next, both in terms of what we're learning from the genre, and then just certainly speaking for myself, what I'm learning from collaborating with Christina. And then that feeds my solo work, and then I do more solo work, and I feel like I bring back more of that into what we're doing. So the back and forth is pretty exciting. I feel a lot more secure in leaning into the underpinnings of plot. in my more literary writing than I used to. Both of us also went to MFA programs, not the same MFA programs, but, I don't know if either of you come from that world, but that is a world where, at least when we were in it, and I was in the 1990s, plot was a dirty word.
Yes.
They're like, oh, that's so
Publishing was a dirty word.
Publishing was a dirty word, right? Short story was the only clean word. And but yeah, so it's been a revelation and a joy to be in a position to share that back to students, which I've been able to do. I've done some now, craft teaching recently, learning from this. And I've had MFA students come up to me and say, nobody tells us this.
Right.
Wow.
This is amazing because, that plot, really this is that plot and character can serve each other. It's not, it doesn't have to be plot, you lose character, or character, you lose plot. You can really, and successfully so, build both integrally into each other. That's what's exciting.
It's been amazing. It's like working out muscles that you then develop. And I have a novel coming out in May called The Foursome that is in my normal world with Mariner. It's set in the Civil War era North Carolina, based on a family story. And I definitely was influenced by the work that we've done together on this book, and on the pacing and on the way you end chapters, just things like that. I think this book is my best of that ilk that I've done, in part because of what I've learned from writing this book with Anne, working on these books.
Well, before we all got on together, Greg and I were talking about how excited we were to have this interview, obviously for the reasons we've mentioned and because the book is so great. But I also said to Greg, I want to ask you guys questions that maybe not every other event or every other interview. And they're probably similar questions to what we get. And those are about process and do we ever fight and what kind of research and how hard it is to outline things like that. And those are all really interesting things. But I'm curious what you guys haven't been asked about this book and working together that you really, would love to share or talk about with each other. I heard you mention how much fun you had, and that definitely translates on the page. It's a really fun book to read. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe something in that area that you haven't been asked about, but the joy of this process?
That's great.
I love that question. Yeah, it's joyful. What's fun is that I think both of us are so jazzed that we're at a moment in our lives when our youngest, my youngest, and has two daughters the same age, are kind of launching. They're not living in our houses so much, although they come in and out sometimes. But it's this, we have some flexibility. And so I was just fitting in my regular writing around the edges and teaching and doing editing and all that. And Anne had her big job. And now both of us can really devote time to this at the same time that we're working on our solo projects. I can't work, I don't know about you, Anne, but it's not that I can work on two different books on the same day. I don't really do that, but we do go back and forth. And now that the publication stuff is gearing up for my new novel next May, I can do that for a few hours and be devoting my time to the book that's due in February with Anne. So, it just feels magical to have time to do that. And also, Anne lives in New York City, as I said, 6 blocks from me, and also in Westport, Connecticut. I live here and in Maine. And so we're able to spend real time together sitting at a table. And we've actually mapped out pretty much all of January and February to be sitting across from each other. Before that, we're kind of working separately, but it's, and with an ongoing text stream and sitting together as much as we can. But the joy of it, I guess, is what I'm talking about, that we feel very lucky to be at this phase of our lives where a lot of people my age are retiring, and I don't even know what that is. I don't have any. Do you guys have, like, what is that? I mean, why wouldn't you just keep writing and working? So I
Yeah.
think both of us feel like we want to keep going as long as we can. We just are, it's just a joy to have another person who is it's kind of like co-parenting with somebody you love, right? It's like
Yeah.
nobody else cares about this child as much as the two of us. And that's what the books feel like with Anne. Anne and I care equally about our books. So who else do you have when you write solo who cares about your book as much as you do? No one. And it's a gift to have someone who, like, we can granularly obsess over lines together in a way that is so fun. And I know you guys know what that feels like.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I love this question. And I feel like I want to answer it in a way that actually alludes to the title of this podcast, which is one of the things that has been amazing in addition to doing the writing and doing the work and all the things that Christina just said is that creating a novel writing partnership at this phase of our creative partnership has done is it's also allowed something that I think friends at our stage of life don't always even get the opportunity to do, which is have these really organic ways of learning even more about the weirdest parts of each other's minds.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that you do when you're in college, right? And you sit up talking all night with your roommates and you're fascinated by each other in this way that feels like discovering the world for the first time because you really are, because you've been in your family of origin for so long. And then suddenly something opens up and you realize the world is filled with ways of being and it doesn't have to be dictated from where I've come from. And I can make choices about where I'm going. At our stage of life, those kinds of opportunities with a friend, they don't present themselves. You can have wonderful dinner parties with your friends, long conversations about your lives and your family, but not the weirdest quirks about your mind.
Right.
That's so cool. And the way I feel like one of the things and why I'm indirectly coming back to imposter syndrome is one of the things that Christina and I found out about each other that we didn't really know before was when we were thinking about writing about our college experience that we touched on before. And we talked about ways that it was similar, reading the same books, but we stumbled on ways that it was like significantly different. And the most interesting one was about imposter syndrome. And in college, I mean, to be blunt, I had it and Christina shed it from high school. And that was fascinating. Like her experience at Yale was an opportunity to leave a certain kind of imposter syndrome behind, which you can talk about, Christina. And mine was the opposite. And part of that was because I went to Yale. My father was a Yale Law School professor. And I thought when I was that I was aiming towards like the highest and best goal, like this was the North Star. And then I got there and I realized, no, the North Star was actually my father and Yale Law School. And I would never achieve that. And I looked around and I thought, I'm never going to be as good as any of these people. And I found myself kind of like shrinking from my own growth because of imposter syndrome.
Well, now that you've opened that Pandora's box, Christina, do you want to talk about imposter syndrome in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it was the opposite. I was just a dummy. That's why. I went to a terrible public school in Maine. I guess I shouldn't be specific.
That was long enough.
Did not prepare me for college, but I felt like I was wearing a mask my entire high school career. I blended. It was okay. I wasn't bullied or anything. I really did blend in, but I never felt like I was who I really was, a weirdo who just cared about books. And so when I got to Yale, I felt like a little guppy who had just been let loose in this big ocean, and I was so happy. I walked around campus saying, I am not the smartest person here. I'm not even close. I'm probably one of the dumbest people here. And it was such a relief. I was so happy to be with smarter people. I didn't have to pretend to be dumb. It was that sounds so ridiculous, but it was. I was just marveling at all the brainy people. I loved it so much. And I just went into it all like, I can be as smart as it's possible for me to be, and I still won't be the smartest. I'll never be the smartest. And it's like, I'll still be kind of mediocre, which felt so good. It just felt so
Right. And for me, it felt so bad.
So it meant that I would bumble around into like fantastic, like I got an agent when I was in college. I had a short story published in a national, whatever. I just was like confident. I was confident because I just could be myself. And I was under no illusion that I should be the smartest. That was another thing. It never occurred to me that like I could actually compete with the smartest people. So I just like was kind of happy as a clam to be learning in that environment. And I think I just didn't presume I could compete really. So I didn't really. But I did what I loved and what I wanted to do. And I majored in English and minored in creative writing. And I always tell, my own students that everybody says that's impractical, but it was actually the most practical degree that someone like me could get because then I became an editor and I made a living as an editor for 25 years. And I taught at the college level. Got an MFA. So doing that track for me enabled me to do what I loved, which my avocation, which was to be a writer until I could make enough money being a writer that I didn't have to do the other things. But I just wasn't qualified for anything else. And so for me, it was very practical.
Before I jump over Greg to ask my next question, I just want to underline just a weirdo who loves books. If that's not the most relatable just identification, I don't know what is. And I love that, you both had such a kind of different manifestation of imposter syndrome at the college level. And I'm wondering how that evolved or changed, particularly in your lives as professional writers. Do you feel it to any degree at any point of the process?
Yeah. I feel like at this moment, I am finally the weirdo who loves books in every manifestation of that. So that is, I am, I don't know, talk to me tomorrow, it'll be different. But seriously, I really am just in this happy stream of life. But it was a 35-year journey to get here from college onward. I actually pivoted the opposite way of Christina in terms of my major. I shied away, even though I took all the English classes, same ones Christina took. I didn't major in English because I loved it too much. And that was my rationale. I was like, oh, I love this too much, so I better not screw it up. Sorry.
Good swear.
Almost went rated R on, yeah. But, and that unfortunately was a choice that I kept coming back to over and over again, sometimes because I had no choice, but sometimes because it felt safe. And I have to really be honest about that. So throughout my adult life, I published a lot of essays. I published short stories. I edited collections of essays, and there was a nagging voice in my head saying, "You're not good enough to actually get all the way through a novel. That's your problem. That's what's wrong with you." Bah. So, I had several novels that I would get 2/3 of the way through and put them in a drawer. And there's the version of me that can tell the true story that I was raising 2 children and had a full-time job and going through the dissolution of a marriage and yada, yada. And those are all 100% true. But from the imposter syndrome standpoint, that imposter did not believe a word of it. Didn't believe it for 1 minute until I had the good, bad fortune of being, downsized from my big job the same year that my 2 children were both starting at colleges, private colleges that I had to pay for. And I went, yowza, and had to scramble, put together a consulting business as a communications person. But it also, at the same time that I was then, shooting for the moon to get as many gigs that could pay the bills as I possibly could, it was a life lesson in tackling this imposter syndrome. Because I was on my own. I had to finally advocate for myself. I was not in an organization. I had to build clients, and I had to build them by proving to them that I had value as a writer in a professional context. And then that fed me as a human in my own writing too. And I said, well, it's now or never. I'm going to, in my off hours, see a novel all the way through from beginning to end. And if it fails, it fails, but I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to fail myself before somebody else fails me. And that's when I got my first novel all the way out the door and it got published. So
Wow.
The Dig, which is an amazing. And by the way, Liz, Anne has never told that story. So that is a.
Thank you.
And
We are getting all the goods.
Yeah, you are. You're great interviewers. I'll just add, because I know we're toward the end, and believe me, there are long roads we could go down. But I'll just say that part of the joy of entering a new genre with someone is that I would never have done this on my own because I would have felt like such an imposter. It's so different from the writing I do, even though I've written suspense. Both of us have written suspense. It's just very different. Writing a thriller is a very different thing. And I don't think without Anne, I would not have had the cojones to do it. And it was like the two of us came to this together, as Anne said, as neophytes. And so it was like a genre we could tackle together, and it gave me courage to do it.
I love that. Greg, would you like to get a question in? Because I keep going.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, you both talked about, having to kind of hustle and push through and overcome a lot and get to this point where you have the time and you have the agency to be able to write the way you want to be able to, approach your craft. And I know with this book, you were able to actually take chunks of time in the Adirondacks and get away to be able to write. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that kind of immersion for you and that experience of being able to kind of write in that space and with that atmosphere?
Yeah, sure. That was so much fun. So we rented an Airbnb for a week down a remote, scary road in scary winter with lots of snow and ice. It was like the end of winter, and holed up there for a week to tackle a really intense part of the editing process and the writing process. And we decided it would be awesome if what we did was work on our thriller all day and then watch thrillers on TV all night. In the woods, in this dark.
We were just terrified the entire time.
Oh my God.
It was ridiculous. We were terrified the entire time. No, it was just a blast. Anne grew up going to the Berkshires. I grew up going to Maine. And so we had these different experiences that fed the atmosphere of the book from our own lives. But we also, of course, living here in New York, know the Adirondacks pretty well. And so that was just kind of icing on the cake to be there for a week and do it and, immerse ourselves in that. And we chose the Adirondacks because it wasn't either of our kind of homes. It was a place that, it was sort of like we came together on the thriller ground and we came together on the Adirondacks too. It was something that neither of us had separately. We could share together.
That's also we knew it enough sort of topographically and geographically to write authentically into it, but it was mysterious enough to us that we could imbue the character Haley, who comes from New York City to this Adirondack town and is a stranger there, with the necessary fears and mysteries of a place that she doesn't know well but has to come to know. So it felt right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want to go back to one quick thing about the imposter question, because this is, after all, the point of your the name of your show. I have never wanted to be hemmed in as a writer. I've done 5 nonfiction books on all kinds of subjects. My early books were not historical and didn't only had tiny little bits and pieces that were maybe flashbacks. But I then got into this situation where I was really expected. I signed with a big agent who said, matter of factly, I want you to write a big book every 3 years, and that's what I want of this kind of sort. And I left her because I didn't want to just do that. I wanted to do other things. And she was like, no, I'm not interested in your writing a thriller. I don't want you to have an imprint. I don't, all these things I don't want you to work on in a Hollywood screen, room. I want you to do what you said, you sort of promised me you were going to do, is what she was basically saying. Right. We ended up friends. I like her. She's amazing. She's very powerful and wonderful, but I couldn't stay with her because I wanted to do this really. And so I'm now at an agency, WME, that is very broad ranging. And my agent is like, knock yourself out. Let's do it. Let's do this. And in fact, he's the one who encouraged Anne and me. We had been offered money to simply write an outline, which they accepted it. He had the contract on his desk. And he was like, this is what you guys have been talking about. This is it. You should do this and I will sell it for you. And so and my publisher was not happy either. They were like, this dilutes your brand. So there was a lot of pushback, but it's been such a growth experience for me that I'm really lucky that Anne just weathered all of that baloney that I had to go through to get to this point. And it's just been really wonderful. It's been as great as we thought, I think. And I don't have a moment's regret, but it is an interesting thing for me to have experienced how you can be kept in a box of expectation.
Well, and now that you've written this really wonderful, delicious novel and know the, just the joy of working together, can I ask what you guys have next? Are you going to write something together? It sounds like you're working on something. Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, we are. So we are deep into our next book, which is called Watch Her Lie. And it is going to be published in November of 2026.
Oh, wow.
So it's already in the queue. And it is set in the same fictional Adirondack town of Crystal River that we invented and scared ourselves with. We can't, and, right, trad wives, that's a piece of it. We can't say more than this because we don't want any spoilers for Please Don't Lie, but there are secondary characters in Please Don't Lie that come back in primary character roles in Watch Her Lie.
Oh, okay.
That has been really fun. It's great. And so we got this 2-book deal and we don't know what will happen next, but we are just so enjoying being on this journey of these 2 Crystal River books.
Yeah, that text thread that we talked about earlier, we've got one going for this, whatever the next book is going to be, however we're going to make the 3rd book together happen somehow. Yep.
Oh, I would love to be a fly on your text thread wall. But I guess that's what your books are. So we're all lucky in that regard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And are there any events you guys have upcoming where people can come see you in real life and ask you all the questions we didn't get to today?
Absolutely. So, Liz, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but
it will be next week. So anything kind of the week of October, like Halloween week would be probably a good time to tell people about.
Okay. Well, we have a bunch of live events the week before Halloween. Those are our last big live events, and they're in Southern California, LA to San Diego, several libraries that we're going to be appearing in, of course, across that week. It would be amazing if anybody wants to come by. We would love it. And both of us have all this information on our websites or on either one of our Instagram handles as well.
Amazing. And we'll share that info when we air the show and share on social. And I think I hit everything. Greg, did you have any? I'm sorry I didn't let you talk very much today.
No, I mean, this was an incredible conversation.
Yes.
No, I think we hit as much as we can hit in the time we have today. So thank you both for being here. This was a really enlightening conversation. It was wonderful. It was fun to talk to another writing, duo. And it's beautiful to see the kind of, not only the creative kind of relationship you guys have harnessed, but just the real, the beauty of your friendship as well. It's wonderful.
Thank you. We love talking to you. And when your next book comes out, if you want to flip the script and have us be the imposters who interview you on
we would love that.
Your own audience.
Deal. That
great.
you have inspired us to get our butts in gear. So thank
Don't
you.
you think that'd be fun?
Oh, definitely.
Anne and I
the
both
ultimate
love to
imposter
interview.
experience.
We love to interview
The
people.
interviewers.
Oh yeah. We've done the last for sure.
Well, and I want to say, I know we're wrapping up and I'm opening this again, but I just really love the sentiment of courage that you've brought out of with each other. And I think that everyone deserves a collaborative partner friendship where they can really be encouraged and cheerleaded and pushed when they need to be. I know Greg has done that for me. I hope I've done that for him. But especially in the world we're in today, safety in numbers and, organizing is so important. So creative partnerships
That's right.
are wonderful.
It is a form of resistance. There's no
Yes.
question.
For
Yes.
sure. Yep.
Now more than ever.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Oh, thank you. Greg, do you want to take us out? I don't want to let go.
I hate to say goodbye, but I will. I will take us out now. Thank you again, ladies. Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg is created and hosted by us, Elizabeth Keenan and Greg Wands. The show is produced and edited by Bookwild Collective founder Kate Herget. Scott Leeds composed our original theme music, and Steve Luoma designed our logo.
And you can find us on Instagram at Imposter Hour Podcast and online at imposterhour.com. Thanks for listening.